All right, hello everybody. I'm Joshua McBride. We're gonna get started with our KVA, KETIV Virtual Academy. Here we're going to be covering the question, can I benefit from CPQ? So we're gonna start with a introduction. It will be me and DJ will be joining us as well. So we'll introduce ourselves here in just a minute. We'll have a poll, then we'll get into what CPQ is and modern buyers and their experience, the benefits for customers and manufacturers. We'll have a second poll actually to kind of get some feedback at that point based on kind of what we've presented. Then we'll look at the power of data, and then we'll have a Q&A. So once again, I am Joshua McBride. I'm a technical solutions specialist with KETIV, and I have 20 years in manufacturing. The 20 years is actually split in two 10-year pieces, one with a natural gas compressor manufacturer and another with a HVAC manufacturer. Between those two businesses, I was involved in so many areas. I tended to stay in engineering, but even within that, I not only did R&D, I did manufacturing engineering, plant expansions. I've got Lean certifications, Six Sigma, amongst some others. Did quality control, set up a quality department, made our company ISO, amongst many other things. And a fun little fact about myself. So I love camping with my family in an RV. I got a little 19-foot RV I've only had for about a year, but we have gone more places than I've probably gone my whole life in this past year with that thing. So that's one of my many enjoyments. So we'll hop over to DJ and he can introduce himself.
Hey there, thanks Joshua, how are you?
Very good.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining today. As stated on the slide here, I'm the Director of Marketing at KETIV. I've got a long history in software and SaaS, CPQ, as well as manufacturing. So I've been brought on today because I bring a little bit of history with me around the CPQ space. Fun fact for me, today is not that fun because we're digging out about 9 inches of snow in St. Louis today. So I'm going to get some exercise later and dig out of my driveway. Also, it still won't stop me from operating my Kamado smoker. So I've got a pork butt ready to go on, and that's one of my big hobbies is smoking delicious mammal fleshes. I also, now that you mention it, Joshua, I got an RV last year too. So you and I are partially responsible for what we did to the RV market last year, which was made it explode. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. So why don't we just jump right in here, and it looks like we're going to do a poll real quick. So Josh, could you tell us what the poll is?
Yeah, I'm bringing it up now. So let me launch it. So the question is, in what area of your company do you work? And we'll kind of give it a minute for people to answer here and see what we get.
Yeah, it's always good to see.
Thus far, it's
as you're going to
100% engineering.
As you're going to see in the presentation, you know, we touch a lot of different parts of the business when we talk about CPQ. So it's interesting to know who has that kind of interest on today.
And so we've actually got one person from manufacturing. We've actually got somebody from the procurement area as well.
We have an all of the above wisher, which they had another option there. So it's good to know. We'll mark that unofficially as an all of the above. All right, cool.
Yeah, I think that's about it there.
All right.
So
here are
the results.
We have an all of the above, which isn't shown, and then of course, engineering is obviously dominating. So good to know. Thanks for participating in that. We got another one coming up in a little bit. So when we titled this session, you know, it's titled around CPQ. Some of you may not know what CPQ really even is. So quickly, let's just set a baseline, right? Configure, price, and quote is what CPQ stands for. And it's really a way to sell, right? It's a way to sell more efficiently, whether your audience is, your internal salespeople, you have distributors, maybe even the end buyer who you want to enable purchasing. It really allows us to do that. The way it's done is a pre-programmed set of rules, allows us to configure that product, can apply pricing, and produce a quote. And that way we can have a very streamlined process for the sales portion. The pricing takes into account usually like quantities, discounts, approvals, and then we can obviously change all the different features of products in the configuration stage, highlighting which things are compatible or incompatible for the buyer. And then ultimately a quote generated. Often that includes things like a visual of the product purchased, product and pricing details, and so on and so forth. So, typically I think a normal sales process for a complex engineering or manufacturing company would be, you've got to sit down, talk with the customer, devise pricing through spreadsheets, usually go to engineering to get a custom version of this product created so you can get a drawing and validate all the pricing and options. And we all know that's a very time-consuming process. So let's talk about what's changing. It's really the buyers that are changing, right? We all know it because we shop more and more online with large retailers like Amazon and get food delivered, and the pandemic really exploded that trend, right? So, there was already a trend, as we're seeing here in 2020, where, e-commerce or that upfront purchasing decision was really made virtually rather than talking with sales. And you see the shift is going to continue to be more and more online, taking the salesperson out of that upfront consideration process and really allowing people to shop more independently. And moving on, if we talk about the buyer, it's not just one way to purchase anymore. You don't just talk to a salesman, right? Like I said, you're doing research online, you're talking with people on social media, you're looking at other vendor websites, and it ultimately creates a lot of complexity for the buyer. As you can see, our good friends at Gartner cite a 77% of people that really say their B2B purchase was difficult or complex. And the whole point of CPQ is to knock that down and make it more simple. So let's talk about how the customer benefits. For one, they can preview what it is that they're going to buy, right? So when you can see what it is you're buying, you have a much more likelihood to convert that sale. Also, when you get that quick pricing, right, it's instant. Potentially, you don't have to wait for these long sales cycles for salespeople to go crunch numbers or work with engineering to really finalize those numbers. And lastly, you're really creating a frictionless ordering process that introduces really no errors, because there are constraints in the buying process that don't allow you to configure a product essentially improperly. So if we break these down into the separate categories, on the configuration side, right, it tends to be very visual and structured, right? We have a predetermined set of engineering rules that really force the user to only choose options that are manufacturable, right? And you want to do that in a very visual way, so that sometimes is done in like a 2D environment, other times a 3D object, and even folks, introducing now augmented reality or virtual reality solutions so that they can live the product kind of in person. Ultimately, that's to allow for that e-commerce experience. So, and then we also talk about the multi-channel aspect, right? The omni-channel, the fact that we might have multiple audiences touching this configurator. It could be a direct purchaser, it could be the salespeople, or the in-between person like a distributor. On the pricing side, you have a predetermined set of pricing rules, and those can be held in the application. The pricing data, the attributes can actually be retrieved from other systems. So we're going to talk about how integration really helps the CPQ experience. And then of course, with pricing comes discounts and approvals. And that can be very complex, but that can also be built into pricing rules and essentially delivered instantly to the buyer or to the seller that's constructing the deal. Or if it requires, some sort of manual approvals from maybe sales leadership or something, there can be workflows established that, allow for you to make those more long tail, multi-person decisions. And on the quoting side, obviously you want all this great content to flow into a quote. And you want that quote to be flexible, to allow for change management, because it's so hard to just, in a manual way, go back and again, reference that spreadsheet again, ask engineering for a new drawing, right? We want that to be a flexible process where the customer can make a change and know with confidence that they can get an answer back shortly that's going to be accurate. And lastly, you want that to be connected to the rest of the organization. So whether that's sending your customer information on what they ordered to your CRM, to the ERP to assure that they have that you have the stock to satisfy that order. You know, again, we'll talk about how integration will increase that throughput. All right, so now we kind of know what CPQ is and how the customers benefit. I'm going to hand it off to Josh. He's going to really talk about how your organization, as they go to implement CPQ, what it's going to do for you internally as well.
Thanks, DJ. Yeah, so generally CPQ is considered to be strictly for sales and marketing. But we've got some figures here that we can look at. We'll just kind of run through them real quick. You know, obviously everybody's concerned with profit. You get a 20% increase in profit through this type of software. Obvious sales volume increase is a piece of that. 34% increase in efficiency, 40% increase in order handling times. Now, these are two pieces that get well beyond just sales and marketing. As DJ alluded to numerous times, there are a lot more people involved in that process than just the sales and marketing personnel, right? They have to get drawings, particularly if it's a configurable or custom type product. They have to get drawings and things from the engineering department that they can then provide back for approvals and so forth. Ultimately, that all has to then be led and fed to the shop floor for manufacturing purposes. And this is an area that is increased, the efficiency is increased dramatically with the use of CPQ for a number of reasons, which DJ's alluded to some, and we'll get into a little further here in a bit. And then these things ultimately increase the margin. Basically, how much money are you making on the product itself? Once again, that's due to the increase in efficiencies that we're getting in other areas other than just the sales and marketing areas. So, you know, once again, this is not something that just sales and marketing benefits from. And ultimately, that means that CPQ is the spearhead in automating across the manufacturing business. So let's look at a few different areas of the business. So once again, the obvious is the sales area. And a few areas to highlight, there's once again, the engagement with the customer goes back to that omni-channel approach. Not every customer wants to approach their product the same way. You can give them multiple methods, whether that's through sales, internal salesperson, directly themselves through a web interface or through a rep. All those options are available to them. Ultimately, we have increases in revenue. We've kind of covered that. But another thing to highlight here is the aspect of training, particularly when you have a customizable product. It can be very difficult to get a new sales rep or a new salesperson in and working efficiently and effectively, because oftentimes we require them to understand the product itself in a way that they are the configurator. They have to understand that product in such a way that they know what options are available and what can and can't be done. But with CPQ, that's all handled within the engine, within the software. And as a result, it can become a simple enough process that even a customer can now configure their product without having a deep knowledge of that product itself. This ultimately leads to engineering, taking all this information that is now coming out of this CPQ process that we've discussed. We can now automate the production of the models, of the drawings that ultimately get fed back. And we can automate that to the point that that can become an immediate result in many cases. This also reduces the amount of error that we generally see in these processes. So that means we have an increase in quality. We also can receive an increase in quality due to the fact that our engineering department is far more efficient. So now they can refocus their resources in other areas, predominantly in the areas of R&D, so that they can improve the quality of the product itself, maybe even produce other product offerings. Or if you're a highly custom environment, that means they can really focus on the highly custom situations that fall outside of a standard configurable product that would be handled in a CPQ scenario. Once again, reaching customers in a more effective manner. We also have the back office areas. The order handling becomes quicker and more efficient. And of course, all companies have personnel and systems in place to handle that. Once again, having quick and accurate information coming in creates an efficiency gain there. This ultimately leads to accounting as well. Once again, the reduction of error results in accounting not having to find those losses, right? They don't know where the money's going, where it's coming from, because we don't have that information readily available, or once again, inaccuracies. But with the increased inaccuracy, with the increased amount of information, they can become more efficient. And even areas of inventory, you can even go so far as to reduce the amount of inventory you carry on hand, because now you know what the product is. It's completely configured and defined quickly and effectively, so that you're not having to carry a bunch of stock because, well, we don't normally know when this is needed, so we just have to have a bunch so we don't run out. Or that maybe that doesn't get defined till later because we got to wait for the engineering team to finish their configuration and their work to know what's really needed. So once again, we carry a bunch on hand, or we order this stuff early, and maybe it won't get used on this job, but we can use it on a later job eventually. Those types of scenarios. And those are all scenarios that I have experienced in my past manufacturing experience. And then ultimately manufacturing, they benefit from the accuracy of the bombs, the fact that they can be delivered immediately at the time of production, and once again, accurate. Once again, I've come from an environment where, at least in the past, where we were developing the bombs as it was being produced, which caused all kinds of inefficiencies. The assurance that that information is accurate allows us to make changes in the manufacturing and process itself. Not just manufacturing, but really all areas of the process, and we're going to get into this here in a second, they have all kinds of checks and balances in place to find the errors that we know we're going to come through. But if we can have accurate information running through that system, we don't need those anymore. And ultimately, that reduces the amount of waste, and that's physical waste in the manufacturing process. So we have another poll here. We'll launch. The question is what aspect, having heard thus far what you have, what aspect of CPQ are you most interested in? And see, thus far we've got CAD automation, which isn't a surprise considering the number of engineers. Some of the other options here, yeah, a few interested in the bomb area. Actually come out to be almost 50-50 there. I'll give you a few more seconds to, okay, some interest in the sales configurator. And we are going to have a demo here in a bit, so we'll look at some of these things. And obviously this is a subject we will continue to revisit. Some interest in the ERP integration. That's good to know. I can hit on that real quick when we get to the demo as well. And we will definitely hit on the the CAD automation. And I'll make sure we look at the visualization and AR ability as well. There's some interest there. So we'll end that and share the results. So very helpful. So that'll help me understand when I get into this demo kind of what to highlight. So getting back here, I've already hit on this, right? With the issues that can occur when we have ineffective data flow or lack of accurate data. Because data is ultimately the thread that enables the digital transformation here. And this is very much a large tool in the digital transformation that can occur. And so kind of what we have illustrated here, and of course, I understand this is very hard to follow. It's hard to make sense of, but oftentimes that's the reality. When we have inaccurate data, we have to have all these back and forth feedback loops and checks and balances, and we have to skip back over this process because we don't really have that information yet. And we got to wait on engineering to produce this, and we're just going to try and skip ahead, but then go back. And it can become so convoluted that mapping out the actual process that occurs in some businesses can become virtually impossible because they're so full of these band-aids that try to catch and prevent the errors that we know are coming down the road. And so really the point is it doesn't have to be that way. That with data, we can truly empower our systems to ultimately look like this. When we leverage our data, we can smooth out this process in such a way that we don't have to have all this back and forth, and we don't have to have all these checks and balances, because once again, we put those checks and balances in place because we know and expect error. But when we're able to utilize the data in such a way that we don't have those errors, we can streamline our process, move straight through quickly and effectively and accurately. And so you'll notice here, we kind of have two areas, okay? We've got tacked on CPQ, and then we've got tacked on design automation. And once again, I'll cover both of these things in the demo. But just to kind of point that out, once again, the idea being that we have a central point of data, and that data moves through this system streamlined. So the idea being that with good data, once again, the flow is smooth and continuous. And also with CPQ, we can connect, control, and unify the data across all these systems. And of course, I don't have the CPQ reaching across the ERP system and so forth, but it does integrate, and we'll see that as well. So the tacked on CPQ really takes hold of these pieces here with the configure price quote order area, but it has integration into so many other areas of the business, which is ultimately what we're going to talk about now. So I got a little ahead of myself there. So with CPQ and its full integration into all the other areas of business, we can not only drive a better buying experience, but we can become more efficient in all the other areas as well. So when speaking of data, we kind of have the input or areas of data, such as the 3D models. We have the product attributes, once again, defining what can interact with what, or, what are the limits, whether that's material limits or, other limits that can be defined by the customer or by the product itself, the pricing tables, and ultimately the customer data itself. And with all that data, we can then achieve these outputs with automation. Once again, the bill of materials, we can produce an accurate quote, we can provide renderings, we can automate the CAD data, the 3D models, and the drawings can be automated. And then ultimately we can pull and feed the ERP and CRM systems with this data. And, you know, data is such a cornerstone of all this. The reality is Amazon is so successful because of this very concept. They take the data and the customer experience, and that is their focus, is the customer experience. And that even feeds into how they handle product themselves with their own systems and in their own shop floor in that sense, and how they pull things and get it out to the customer. Google, one of the largest companies in the world, period, is 100% focused on data collect and data usage. And we all pretty much can't live without Google, right? So we're going to hop into our demonstrations here. And once again, this is going to be fairly quick. I'm not going to get into deep details here. This is just to give you a quick overview. And once again, if you have, we will have upcoming sessions to dig down deeper, and you can also contact us to get more information, and we'll get into how you can do that as well. So I'm actually going to start here with Salesforce. Log in here, log into CRM here, Customer Resource Management System. And of course, it's going to be a little slow. Okay, skip that. Okay, and I'm actually going to create an opportunity, and I'm going to push that directly to Tacton. And it's going to be extra slow probably because we're streaming. So I'm going to make sure everything else is logged on. Well, of course, we got to have technical difficulties. It doesn't matter how much I test beforehand. Okay. Well, it's only a few clicks. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to hop over here to opportunities. We'll see if that loads up quickly or not. And we're going to create a, oops. I think we go. Now it's all loaded. We'll create a new opportunity here. Okay, it's being too slow. Anyways, we can create a new opportunity. With that, we can ultimately push that into Tacton, and it would ultimately show up here. So I was going to do that live, systems being slow, so we're just going to skip by that. But it would show up here as a new opportunity. Since that's not working, I'm just going to go ahead and create one. Okay. And you can see here, we also have buttons where we can pull or push that information, or here we can that information back to Salesforce. So I'm going to go ahead and create a solution, and this is apparently going to Beijing. And I guess they'll be paying in US dollars. It's just an example. Okay. And I'm going to add a product. Our product is actually an elevator. So I'll select the elevator. And this can be, once again, this could be a customer interface. This can be a sales rep interface. But the idea is here, ultimately, we can define the aspects of the product, and we can actually interact with it and see the result here live. And I'm going to zoom in on this panel here so that we can see if I change the number of floors, you get an immediate change in this panel. I can also interact with this model. So I can move these up to predefined points. Move this around to predefined points in which these things are allowed. So I can't drag this off to onto some other part of the wall. I can only change it to predetermined or allowable areas. So once again, we can see here not only the ability to interact, but controls that are in place so that I cannot produce an impossible product, right? I can zoom out here and see the whole result. And I'm just going to skip on here to go ahead and look at our interior. And I can change the floor. We'll see, we now have a dark floor. Change the colors of the wall. Maybe the ceiling, the lights. Okay. And once again, all live. As well as the bill of materials is getting changed and updated live, right? So it's even showing the changes that I've made. So it started here, I removed that and replaced it with this instead. We can see that immediate result. Let me scroll back up. And we also have our pricing, okay? And once again, the amount of visibility that is available to the external customer or the sales rep and stuff, that can all be controlled and customized so that you have a situation in which you can come apply discounts later that are not necessarily visible to those you don't want them to be visible to. So I'm going to save this here and I'm going to hop over to a finished one so that we don't have to wait on it to process. But basically, we kind of have a finished proposal here. And this actually has a life cycle that this goes through as well. So we can take it through these different stages of approval through the different departments and so forth. And all that's integrated. But, you know, we have ETOs and tasks that can be applied and created and run through those processes as well. But I want to hop over here to one area of CAD automation. We'll also look at it in Inventor. But once again, this can be provided here, whether that's directly to the customer or for people to come and make those approvals, right? We can see the different drawings. We can see the model. This is just the car itself without all the, you know, cladding and stuff provided yet. We can download PDFs, JPEGs. We can download a step file. Then we also have the TCS file that contains the current configuration information. And the reason I mention that is because that can then be downloaded and applied into Inventor or your other CAD software. So this is actually, I'm using Inventor here, but this can be used with SolidWorks, Creo, and so forth. It integrates with each one of those. So let's go ahead and hop over. Oh, and because somebody mentioned it, the ERP system. So let's go back here to opportunities. So created a solution. So here I can make ready for the budgetary estimate. Click get ATP. And what that's going to do is it's going to push this information and ultimately do a comparison with the ERP system. And it'll take a little bit to process, so we're not going to see the result here today. But once again, we can get into this in detail in a future presentation, but just know that it's there. This is something that is currently built into the system and can do. So for the sake of time, I'm going to hop over to here. And this is a different example. So this is the interface here that is used to kind of build the system. And what's actually awesome about this is whether this is done in the CPQ side and you create what we would term the product model on the CPQ side, or if you start here and you create it here, it's interchangeable, right? So once again, a single source of data. So if I started and I created my model here in Inventor, I can simply export what's called the TCX file. I can upload that to the CPQ side and literally it's ready to go. As soon as it's uploaded, I can come in here and start creating the product, okay? Once again, I'm not going to take the time to show that now, but it's literally that simple. You can see here too, and this is the nice thing about this is a simple interface. You basically, in fact, there's the ability to create this product tree based upon your model, and it will create it automatically. There's no programming involved. You don't have to understand any programming language. And the powerful thing about this is that it's not, you can do if-thens, but it's not about if-thens, it's about relationships, right? So we create these equivalencies or greater than less thans. And from that, it can understand all the possible iterations of the product. And so this is literally all that's needed is I've brought in really my models. I've created the associations for the dimensions. Okay, so I have a dimension in the model, and that dimension is equivalent to the length that is calculated here. Literally that simple. And then we have the relationship and how that length relates to that dimension in other areas. Okay. This is once again a very, very simple example here. That ultimately results in, let me get rid of this interface. And once again, I upload this and you will get this interface, here just from that without, it will do all the conversion and the way it appears and looks automatically. Okay. And so here I can pick 3 windows. It's going to change my model. Boom. I've got what I need. I can change the length, change the height. I'm getting a price calculated. My model's up to date, ready to go, just like that. We can also automate the creation of drawings through here as well. And so kind of the thing is you can see this can be done in both areas. We can have these generated here or back in our interface. And we can even drive other types of documents from this information as well. Once again, that can be done here, or it can be created here as well. I guess in this example, we don't, waited too long. So once again, a real quick overview, just kind of showing what the possibilities are. And once again, the nice thing is if you're not ready for CPQ, but you want to automate your model production, your drawing production, then you can just start from this side. Whenever you're ready to talk to the CPQ side, whenever the business is ready, you already got what you need. You just have to upload it to the site. So the last thing I'll show here is the yeah, here we go. I believe this is the no, this is not. Well, that has a lot of it. I'll probably show both. I got so many windows up here. And maybe that was it. Okay. So here we have a truck that is, either a customer or a sales rep is configuring based upon their particular wants and needs. And I lost we'll just let it go because it's not very long. And so kind of what he's illustrating here is different things such as the temperature that is there or the amount of traffic you expect. Those types of information can be used to configure the product, right? So that once again, the customer just knows they don't need to know about the product itself. They just need to know what their needs are. And through that, we can configure their product. So if they're working in a particular environment, we can use that to then provide them the type of product they want. You can even use this to prioritize. You can prioritize on performance. You can prioritize on price, different things like that. Here we're looking at bill of materials, kind of how things shift and change. And let's get forward a little bit. Yeah. So here he's kind of finished out kind of what he wants as a product. And when he's done, you get a QR code that you can then download the tacked-on software, use the QR code, and then you can actually look at this in real life, walk around it, basically do everything you would do except interact with the product itself. So he's actually going to look in here to the cab, see what it looks like, get an idea for the amount of space, things like that. And then let's see if I can, let's see. I may have accidentally closed my other example. Maybe that's why I'm not seeing it. Seems I lost my other example, but once again, we can get into those details later. The other example I had, I'll just kind of talk through real quick. Basically, it was medical equipment. They had different pieces of medical equipment, and they were actually viewing it in augmented reality in the actual hospital environment in which it would be used. And then they could reconfigure that based upon, well, the amount of space it was taking up, we want a vertical configuration. Okay, that takes up less space, and it will literally fit in between these other pieces of equipment we have here. And they could see that live, walk around it, and get a sense of scale and interaction as well. So with that, let me back over to our presentation. We do have some up and coming KVAs. Once again, we will be revisiting this subject in the future. But the next couple of KVAs we have coming up are creating a Vault Basics server on your own computer. You don't have to have a server sitting somewhere in a server room to do that. And then we're going to also have one covering simulation using Autodesk and ANSYS together. We also have a blog in which we cover these types of subjects as well, so that you can keep up with this information, have a quick reference. And these will also be put up on YouTube for you to view later. So we'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A. So, we will tag team between me and DJ. If anybody has any questions, you can submit those through the chat, or there's a Q&A available in Zoom.
Yeah, I don't see anything coming in yet, but I definitely would encourage people, if you have any questions, to pipe up, or you can reach out. We have information there, of course. I know one question that I get a lot of times is, especially from engineering heavy focused folks, is really understanding that automation piece, and when you're in a complex environment, what it buys you, right? So I've encountered customers before where they claim, well, our products are so variable that we can't get value from this. And I encourage everybody to think about that traditional 80-20 rule, because I think it really can help, right? If you have a product that 80% of it is common amongst your customers, but 20% is highly variable, you get that solution up front that the salespeople or the customer can work with and get it most of the way. And then it goes back to your engineering group. And as Joshua showed, you can be teed up with those files ready to manipulate it that rest of the 20%. So,
and that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And I can kind of show here. So, we were just manipulating this model, and so I can, manipulate it, do what I want. And then once it's manipulated, I can still come in and make any changes I want, change the extrusion, cut a hole, whatever I want to do to this model, to provide that customization, right?
Right. All right, cool. Well, if there's nothing else, I don't want to keep people around. I appreciate everybody coming, checking this out. Yeah, Josh here can provide demos for you, right? So if there's a particular use case that you're challenged with, reach out to us and we can try to actually walk through that particular use case for you. I'll show you some more details of the solution. Cool, Joshua, I appreciate you putting this together for us. This has been great. I appreciate the demo. Very informative.
And, once again, if anybody, here we go. We have, support, you can contact support@ketiv.com if you have any, click there. If you have any additional questions that maybe come up later that you didn't think about here, if you want to see more of the product or the capabilities or anything like that, just let us know. We are here and available. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time, and hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful coming weekend.
Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.